We're good. All right, we're live. I apologize for some of the technical difficulties, but we're live, and we're going to be talking today about toddlers, how to get toddlers to listen. And so this is a webinar for that. It's a little bit different format than I've done. Obviously, I do a lot of recorded, edited videos. And so this is a little bit different format. I've been head down in my new course that I'm offering, and I'm really excited about that. I'll tell you guys more about that. But yeah, we're going to be talking about toddlers tonight. So I'll let some people come in as the notifications go out and people realize that we're actually live. If you are joining, let me know that you're here, where you're from. Love to know where everybody's joining me from. And then in a couple minutes, we'll get started as people roll in. So I know a lot of people will watch it on a recording, but want to be good for the people that are actually here live, and so that they're not missing any of that. But other than that, everything is good. Go Court, right on. Having trouble seeing these things, but that's okay. I tried doing one of the recordings on my laptop thinking, oh, that's going to be better because I've done it on my phone and I don't get very good lighting, or I don't get very good, I can't see the chats on my phone. And so it was just funny. So I tried to do it on the laptop and didn't, the lighting's bad. Hey, Manny. Hey, Gabrielle from Kentucky. Manny from Florida. Right on. Glad you guys are here. It's going to be good. Going to be talking about toddlers, and I'll start in a couple minutes here as people roll on. But yeah, toddlers are always an interesting bunch, and for those of you that have them, for me. When my children were in that stage, that was really the reason I started Dad University. Was I started learning so much about toddlers and the behavior, and it really was the impetus for me to start this. Good or bad, the state that I was in, I knew I had to do something different, and that was the reason. So what I'm going to do, a couple people more, let them roll in. But yeah, excited about this webinar. We're going to get into getting your toddler to listen. So I'll start, and as people come in, obviously, they'll have to catch up. You can go and obviously at any time watch the recording. So the one thing I want you to keep in mind when you're dealing with your toddler is that their brains are still developing. We treat them often because they can communicate and they seem like they're people, their brains are grown, but the truth is that they don't know what's going on. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. They don't know how to communicate. And so, getting them to listen, it's kind of like, so much of it falls on us as the parent. You can't rely on the child to do a certain thing or be a certain way. And so it falls on us. And because their brains aren't developed so much, we treat them as if they are an adult, and we'll give them an instruction or we'll ask them to do something, but they're not doing it, because they don't know often what to do. And we will say, oh, no, they know exactly what to do, or they're trying to manipulate us. And the truth is that they are not. So I really just want that as to be the basis of this discussion. And the next thing too is with that is having realistic expectations. When a toddler is 2-3 years old, you've got to realize they haven't been on this earth very long. So you're trying to get them to listen. You're trying to get them to not whine or throw tantrums and do that. So you have to keep that in mind as well, is that they haven't been here very long. And so you have to have realistic expectations. And the idea that you're just going to say something and they know exactly what to do and they're going to listen to you, it's not going to happen. And that's that's something that, not as a technique per se, but just as a mindset. And, the first couple things I'm going to talk about are mindsets, and then I'll get into the very specific techniques and the things you can do to improve the listening for them. So that the expectations is important. The other thing is to not take it personally. We as fathers often, we take things so personally, and we think that our child is out to get us. And the truth is that they are not. They're just trying to figure out this world, and they're not trying to get us. So you can't take it personally either. And, I hear this all the time, and, the person will say, well, I asked my daughter to do this, and she yells back, or she throws a tantrum, and she's just not listening, and you find out she's 3 years old or 4 years old. And so you have to have realistic expectations. You have to understand that their brains aren't the same, and you can't take it personally. You have to realize where they are at in their development, and it doesn't have anything to do with you or your lack of skills or such. And like I said, we'll get into some of those specific skills in a bit. The other thing, and like I said, a lot of these first things are mindsets, is patience. And it sounds, of course, you have to have patience. But I can tell you that, that was probably, and it still is, my most difficult thing is patience. And I work on that all the time. I've got a video about patience and how important patience is to, people are, oh, thank you guys, Jake. The patience that you have to have for these kids, at this stage is so great. And I think that was probably the one thing that I didn't realize how much of it I was going to need and how much I would need to practice. And so I have practiced my patience. I meditate, I do breathing exercises, but also the mindset of understanding that these kids aren't out to get you. They are just toddlers. They're learning, all of these things. It puts you in a little bit different place that you end up having more patience as a result of it. So that really works. So I want to give you some very specific tactical things that you can do to get them to listen, because that's, a lot of times why people come. You want to know, okay, what can I do? Sure, all this mindset stuff is great, but what can I actually do as an action item? So the first thing is getting down to their level. And what that means is actually squatting down. So, you're trying to get the attention of your toddler. It's squatting down and looking them eye to eye. And the reason for that is a couple things. One, when you do that, you have a tendency to soften your voice. You have a tendency to also not be as scary. And as a father, we're huge compared to our toddlers. And dad has got a loud voice. He's big, he's intimidating, and that doesn't feel very good, And I talk about that a lot in avoiding tantrums and avoiding the whining, but when you want them to listen as well, squatting down and getting down to their level is really helpful. And then the next thing related to that is when you are squatted down, you can touch them. Put your hand on their shoulder, put your hand in their hand. A lot of times what a toddler will do is trying to get your attention, and maybe you're talking with somebody else and they're dragging on your shirt, or you have the picture of the kid dragging on your shirt, or tapping you, or mom, dad. You can often stop that by just putting your hand on their shoulder, or holding their hand and doing something. So when you are squatting down and you want them to listen, and you say, obviously you're going to say these things in a calm voice, but before you do any of that, you squat down and maybe you put your hand around them, or you give them a hug or such. And what it is that a toddler is typically really responsive to touch. Most children are. And what that does is it's a calming mechanism for them. And often the brain for them is thinking about so many different things. They're just not concentrating on the current moment. And oftentimes that can bring, I mean, although they're more present often than we are, but that can bring both us into the present and them. And so giving them a little, arm around them, or touch their hand, or, do whatever, that can be really helpful in getting them to look at you and focus, and really feeling like they are then listening to you, and they're being more attentive. So squatting down, giving them that touch. The other thing is using simple words. So, one of the examples that I give is with my kids, let's say you're going to go, it's bath time. You simply just say bath, brush teeth, pajamas. What happens is we have a tendency to give them so much instruction. Hey, it's really important that you go upstairs now. It's time for bed. Blah, blah, like all of that. They don't hear any of it. They can't. Their brains don't process it. So you just give them a simple instruction, and that simple instruction, maybe it's here, walk, upstairs, room, whatever. Learn to simplify your words and treat them like little cave people. They don't need the big instruction. And the other thing I'll add on to that is using the simple words. Only give them one instruction at a time. If you're telling them like, hey, come over here and grab this and then do this, or you're saying, go upstairs, grab your blah, and then come down, but like, there's too many things in a row, they won't be able to understand and comprehend all of those. And so in the same vein of like using more simple words, provide less instruction and just do one thing at a time. And so that you're lowering your expectations of what it is that you're wanting them to do. When you're using the simple words, oftentimes what's really helpful is providing them options. And this was something that I learned, and I can tell you it changed the game for me, because what happens is the toddler is in a state at this age where they're learning about boundaries. They'll often start saying no when they're a little bit older, and they're kind of looking at what it is that they can do and what they can't do. And so what happens is when you give them options, they feel like they're in control, and that's what they want. They want to be in control. And so, it's not this like huge conscious thing, but it's like they want to decide what they're doing and how they're doing it and whatever, and mostly just because they're not that concerned about other things. Like they're really, really focused on one specific thing. So you want to provide options, and now the options, you are okay as the parent with both options. You only give them two. But I'll give you an example. You're at the park, and it's time to leave, and you've got to leave, and maybe you have some difficulty, the child's not listening, that it's time to go. You say, hey, it's time to go. Would you rather walk to the car or skip to the car? And of course, you have smart children that'll say, well, I don't want to do either of those. But those are the two options, and that's a different scenario. But for the most part, the child will want to choose one of those, because they get the power. They get to choose it. Same thing with what they're going to eat. You'd say, hey, do you want the white bread or the wheat bread, or do you want turkey or do you want ham? Do you want carrots or do you want celery? You're okay with either of those choices, but let them choose out of two things. And so that gives them this power. It gives them the ability to feel like they have a choice. And that's what they want, because who really wants to be told what to do? I don't. And if I'm at the park and my parents saying, let's go, it's like, I don't really want to go. And I don't get a say in it. And so even in some of those situations, I've taught advanced situations and scenarios where, the park, you have to give them the time, and you might say, hey, it's 10 minutes, it's 5 minutes, whatever, but you might be able to say, hey, we can either stay at the park for 5 extra minutes, or you can do this when you get home for 5 extra minutes. So those kinds of situations you'll get to be more comfortable with when you're starting, instead of dictating things all the time and telling them and just providing this extreme instruction, give them those options. I see there's questions coming up, and I'll absolutely answer questions at the end. I'm going to get through the webinar and definitely will answer those. So the providing options is really important. And like I said, you just give them two. You don't need to give them multiple options and such. Another really powerful thing is telling them what to do instead of what not to do. And when you want your toddler to listen, you tell them what to do. And so here's if you can think about it. Your child is on a sidewalk and they're running, and you don't want them to run. You're scared, or there's a safety issue, whatever. And you might say no or stop. But you don't say no running. You say walk. You tell them what it is that you want them to do, and avoid telling them what you don't want to do. And so that's a really powerful thing too, because we all can, understand the instruction. And so for a toddler, let's say they're, another example is maybe they're biting or they're hitting. Hitting is a big one with toddlers as they learn their, sort of their extremities and what they're doing. But instead of saying, no hitting, you might, grab their hand and say soft, soft, or, touch, and you could say no hitting, but they're still hearing the word hitting. They're not maybe as familiar with no. They're getting to know the word no. And so you show them what to do, or maybe it's their sibling and they're hitting their sibling, or they're grabbing, or they're biting. Instead of the bite, show them to kiss. You say no bite, we kiss. And again, using those simple words. So those are some things that I think are really important. The other is, in thinking about the positivity, is positive reinforcement. So let me give you an example of positive reinforcement. A positive reinforcement would be is that you catch your child doing something really good, or something that you expected, and what happens is we've become really good at finding the things and pointing out the things of our children that aren't good, the things that they're doing wrong. And that doesn't feel good for the child, but also for us, it doesn't really get us anywhere. So what we want to do is give them positive reinforcement so that they are repeating that behavior. So I'll give you an example. Your child is, or you have their siblings and they're playing really well with them, and you might say, hey, I notice you're playing very nice with your sister. I really appreciate that. Or, you had to leave and you left the house and they just didn't give you a hard time. Well, you don't really expect that they're going to give you you don't think that you should say anything, because that's just how they're supposed to be. Like, they're supposed to go with you. But you have to be mindful of this stuff and say, you know what? I just wanted to tell you it was very helpful that when I asked you to leave, you came right with me. That got us to our place on time. And I just wanted to say thank you. This works really well with spouses as well, when you give positive reinforcement. This is just, it's a technique that we all know, and it's proven over and over that positive reinforcement works better than negative reinforcement. So, punishment and taking things away and the negative attention and all of that stuff, it doesn't work as well as the positive reinforcement. And if you don't believe me, I'll give you an example as an adult. Your significant other, or you do something for your significant other. Maybe you do some, like you get them, or let's say you do some act of service, like you do the dishes, or you wash their car, or you clean up something and whatever. And then your spouse or significant other comes in and just says, "Oh my, I can't believe you did that. That was so nice of you." I tell my wife, and now it became a joke, but I said, "I can't believe that my underwear just reappears in my drawer. And I said that after the fact. I just said, I just want to thank you for doing this. Like, because she does the laundry. I said, it's so awesome and helpful that you do this. And I genuinely appreciate it that she does it. And because of that, she doesn't mind doing it. And so you can think about it for yourself as well. If somebody gives you that praise and says, thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for doing the dishes. Like, that was so thoughtful of you. I really appreciate that. You don't think you're going to want to do the dishes again? Like, we all love that praise, And so think about it for your spouse. Think about it for your children. Give them that positive reinforcement, And it is that stuff that we just don't think about because we have expectations that they should be doing something. They should be leaving with us on time. They shouldn't be yelling at their sibling. They should be playing nice, or they should be whatever. We should all over them. But it is so important to give them that positive reinforcement. So that's that. The other thing is to repeat, and repeat. So as I said in the beginning, if you were here or you're watching it now on replay, the toddler brain is developing. And as a result, we have to repeat things 5,427 times, or at least that's what it feels like. And that's normal. I used to think that my kids were somehow unique in the fact that I would say the same thing over and over and over. And, I also looked at it and said, well, maybe I'm not doing it correctly. And that can be true too, where you feel like you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. And so then even talking with your toddler, and then as your kids get a little older, and saying, hey, what could we do so that you'll remember to do this? Or what can I say to remind you? Or what do you think you should do to remember to take off your shoes when you come in the house? Or how could we remember to throw away your trash when you're done eating? Or to put away your clothes, or whatever it is. And you ask them those questions, and they may not have a perfect answer, but they might actually have an answer and say, what would be helpful is if I had a chart, or if you came in and told me in just one thing at a time, or and as a toddler they may not be able to articulate that, but I know as the kids get older, that's the kind of thing that you want to have those conversations. And so you can have those conversations even with a toddler and say, hey, sometimes I want to get out of the house fast. I mean, if they can communicate and listen, say, I want to get out of the house fast. What's the best way I can help you do that? And so that's a lot of the toddler tips. I hope that was helpful. I want to get to some of the questions. If you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. Let me know where you're from. The other thing too I want to mention is I am very excited. I have a course now. We do talk about toddler listening. We talk about discipline. We're going to talk about communication and affection and your mindset as a father. This is a course for dads. It includes other things in addition to the course. But if you have interest in this, email me, info@daduniversity.com. We'll set up a phone call. I'll check and see, I'd like to talk with you more, see if it's a good fit for you. But I have a couple more spots left for this initial launch that we're doing. And so I'd love to have you, as part of that if you're interested. So email me, info@daduniversity.com. Also, make sure to like and subscribe this video, or subscribe to the channel if you're not already. So let me see, I've got some time here. Let me see if I can, wow, okay, let's see here. Jake, how's it going? Gabrielle, good to see you again. Sorry with my finger on the phone. I'll try it here. Let me do it from this side. There. Now my finger's not over that thing. So when you need them to do something, you give them options to choose from. Yes, so Gabrielle, yeah. I mean, you want to give them two choices, and you're okay with either choice. That's the key, is that you're okay with either one of those choices. So Avram says, although rare, when giving my daughter options, she sometimes, says neither or nods her head. What should you do? Well, the first thing is know that you have a smart child. So you do have to talk with them about, these are the options, and you just stick with that. And if they say, well, no, I don't like those options. Depending on how smart or, how articulate the child can be, you could say, what is the option, that you want or that you would like to do? Now, you got to be careful. You could be opening up a can of worms. But for the child, you usually have to just reiterate and say, those are the options we have. And if they say, well, I don't like them, you say, if there is a third or fourth option, you could possibly let it in there. But they have to get used to making those choices, until you can give them some more flexibility. So it kind of depends on what it is, and sometimes that could be clothes, it could be eating, it could be, doing something. So maybe you can give me a scenario in which, that your specific child does that. But, usually you just have to stick to it and say, those are the options. I'm sorry. And the other thing you can do right then is show them some empathy. So let's say you want to leave the park and they don't want to leave the park. And then you say, well, do you want to, run to the car, or do you want to skip to the car, or do you want to walk backwards to the car? And they say neither. You then put on some empathy and say, you know what? I know you want to leave this park. Like, I'd want to stay here too. I'm having a good time. I love spending time with you. We have to go to this other, place, and so that's what we have to do. So, do you want to run, or and you just repeat it. And sometimes that empathy of like, you're listening to them and you hear them. And a lot of times that is, you know what? I know, I don't want to leave either, but we need to. Or, you know what? I'm sorry if you don't like ham or turkey, but those are the options that we have. We don't have any other options. And they say, well, I want yogurt. You say, well, yogurt's not an option. So that's something. If that helps. Anybody else ask some questions I can answer here? Anything about toddlers, or if you guys have anything else? Manny, good to see you. Congrats. Coming in February, new child. Right on. Gabrielle says, should I shy away from preschool so I can teach these principles myself? No. I think, should I stay away from preschool so I can teach my child these principles? No, I think you can still, the preschool may teach some principles too, but you could still teach these things and, allow them to go to school. They may or may not have. So Avram says, the recent cases when I asked her to pick up her room, she's 5, and I asked her if she wants to clean up with music or no music, and she says neither. So cleaning up a room, I have a video, I believe we did, or maybe we did a podcast on that. So when they are 5, it is very difficult to get them to clean their room. At least it was for my children. And what I learned and I use as a technique is a couple things. One is to give them very specific tasks as it relates to cleaning up their room. So what cleaning up their room means. It means get the clothes off the floor, make their bed, straighten up whatever. They actually don't often understand all of that, and they have a different mindset of what cleaning actually is. And I know my kids are 10 and 12. They still have a different idea of what cleaning is, I've seen situations where, they made an actual, my daughter was baking and she cleaned everything up and wiped down the counters and she knew she was baking and so she had to clean up. But I wasn't, I have to be careful. She made a good effort to clean up, but it was still there's still a film of stuff on the counter and, even though you can see where it was wiped down. So their level of cleaning or the detail of the cleaning may not be the same as yours, but you also don't want to discourage it. So what I would suggest in those scenarios is say, you know what, we've got 3 things to clean up, and that's all you give them. You say, I want you to make your bed, I want you to pick your clothes off the floor, or give them 2 even, or write them down. If they can read, or you could show pictures, if they have like a daily, what we did is you actually create like a chart of some kind that shows here's the things to do for cleaning your room, and have a picture. And one is the clothes off the floor, the other one is making the bed, the other one might be hanging something, whatever. You have to put yourself in the place of a 5-year-old or 4-year-old or 3-year-old or 6-year-old or 10-year-old, whatever. And that's hard to do. As a grown man, that is often hard to do. But when you realize that and you begin to do that with your children, you just parent differently. You become more patient, you become more tolerant, you become, more at ease, and you realize that like they're trying. Or you feel like they're not trying, but when they're 5 years old and you've asked them to clean up the room and they haven't cleaned up the room, they may not even know what clean up their room is. So you have to lower your expectations and just maybe ask them, say, hey, every morning I want you to make your bed. And then you choose one other thing to clean up or whatever, or you're there with them. That's another big thing too is, you say, hey, let's sing a song, or let's do the cleanup song. We used to have that with my children. And you know what? Let's clean up together. Because when they're that age, they often feel like they're just being dictated to, or they're being told what to do, even though they are. And so sometimes that helps if you say, hey, come here, let's make the bed together. Or hey, let's put the clothes away or the toys. Let's put them together. Let's do it, and let's sing the song. And so what you're doing is you're teaching them those habits. You have to be careful that you have this expectation that they're going to do exactly what it is that you want. You're teaching them these habits of cleaning up after themselves, of eating well, of exercise, all of these different life lessons. These are things that you're teaching them. And so when you switch your mindset a little bit, and I have some videos on having the mindset of a coach and being a coach to your children rather than a parent. There's a videos called the Fatherhood Formula. I have a series of videos, and one of those is coaching. That's a good video to go over. It's in the playlist. There's a playlist. I don't know if I can link it on the lives, but I have to go back and link it. So those are really good. Those are great questions. If you guys have any other questions, feel free. Let me know where you're from. If you're chiming in here, you're popping in. I'd love to hear where you're from. Sorry. Oh, wow, these didn't refresh. That's where they all are. So, Chaos. Says, I have a 1.5-year-old. She throws tantrums and screams. How do I handle her tantrums and screams better? So you first have to realize that the reason she throws a tantrum is that it works. It gets your attention. I just did a live about tantrums. I have a couple videos on specifically like your toddler throwing tantrums. And there's a couple tips. At 1.5, they're not really understanding it, but you can ignore them if you're in a safe place. Like, don't just like for the first time ignore them in the middle of the store and walk away. But if they're at home and they're safe, and you could say, well, I'll come back when you calm down, or and maybe they'll throw themselves on the floor or such. The key with all of that is getting to a place where and identify that a tantrum could happen. And so it's doing all of those things we talk about prior to. It's having empathy and listening. It's putting yourself in the place of a 1.5-year-old. It's getting down to their level. It's putting your arm on them. It's talking to them softly and giving them the instruction on what you want them to do, what you not want to do. A big one is empathy. And so that's putting your place in, you put yourself in the place of the child. and saying, you know what? If I was a 1.5-year-old, I'd want that darn cookie also. You know, my mom or dad said I can't have the cookie. I want the cookie. And we are not going to let them have it, you know? And so even saying that and say, you know what? I would want this cookie too. I know that you love the cookies. I hear you. And so what we're able to do is after dinner, we'll have a cookie, you know, and so what you have to do is you have to learn empathy. And with a 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even beyond, empathy as a dad and as a parent is the number one thing that I've said has changed the way that I parent. So from a tantrum standpoint, you've got to identify some of those things prior and realize that the reason they're having a tantrum is that it works. You're feeding into it. You know, they're having the tantrum. You're then saying, get over here, and you know, and you won't have it. You know, I just saw another person had posted that they swat them on the butt. It's not going to work. I'm telling you, I'm drastically against any of that. It may stop them right there, but that you're not teaching them the right behavior. What teaches them is by showing them the right behavior. So, let's say they're whining and they're crying. You say, listen, that's not how you're going to get the cookie. You're going to get the cookie after we eat dinner. Or, you know what? You want to play with your toys right now, but we have to leave. So what can we do? I know you really want to play with your toys, but you can't right now. So, we need to leave. Now, here's the part as a parent is you have to also get to a place where the tantrums don't affect you. And that's your superpower. And how you do that is by thinking about all these things, that you are a coach instead of a parent. The child is not out to get you. They're not trying to manipulate you. They're not trying to piss you off. The child is just trying to communicate. And at 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, they don't know how to regulate their emotions. We have to teach them that. So getting upset at a 1.5-year-old who has no idea what the emotions are that they're feeling. They have no idea how to communicate that they are angry, or that they want that cookie, or that they don't want to leave, or that they want the toy, or that they don't want to be here right now, or that you're being mean to whatever. That they have no idea what they're doing. And so when you think about that, it changes the way that you're going to approach them. And you can't do good parenting by yelling and being angry and all of that. So I once had a colleague who used the term pause and then parent. So for yourself, you got to learn patience, breathing, counting to 10, pausing, whatever. Those are all going to be techniques that are going to help you be a parent. And that's why I said, and even in the course that I'm offering now, the most important thing is our mindset. We have the ability to control our emotions and manage our emotions. Children do not. They learn that. And many of us actually still don't. I was just talking with somebody earlier who's having a real difficult time, but basically they're blaming everything on their wife and saying, she does this, and so I get pissed off, and she does that, and then this bothers me. But I just was like, whoa. Hold on a second. You realize that you have a choice of whether you get upset or not. And so it's the same thing with a tantrum. You get to decide if that tantrum bothers you or not, and you have to decide that it doesn't. That the child is trying to communicate. They're on the floor banging look at them and feel bad for them. Feel empathetic and say, I feel so bad that this child doesn't know how to communicate. Let me try to help them communicate. So if you have to switch that. And so for me, the biggest flip is your mindset. And that's what's really, really important. So I hope that helps. So Avram, you're welcome. Avram says the father-daughter relationship, the videos have really helped. That's great. I love hearing that. Joseph from South Carolina. Awesome. Manny, your partner Stephanie loves this, that you listen. That's awesome. Hello, Stephanie, as well. I'll give a shout out. We love it when spouses and significant others and partners support what's going on here. It's something that, fathering or being a father, and it is awesome. That's why I'm here, but it's not easy either, and I had a conversation this morning. I've been having a lot of conversations. I had a conversation with this morning with a gentleman who was breaking down, and we were talking through a chat, and he just was really having difficulty with what is happening right now. Pandemic, isolation, toddlers, and so I explained, it's like, the thing you have to do is you have to practice. And parenting is like anything else that you want to get good at. You have to practice. You're not going to go to the gym and lift real heavy weight right all of a sudden. You're not going to pick up a guitar and be able to play an amazing song the first time around. And parenting is like that. And what's interesting about parenting is that it changes all the time as they develop and grow, and new changes. I have a 12-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, so I'm dealing now with preteen and teen issues, or tweens. And so learning all about that and learning, how to communicate and deal with that. So, and knowing for yourself that it doesn't happen overnight. This stuff takes time. And so you have to have patience with yourself. Understand that there's no such thing as perfect parenting. We all get upset. We all get angry. We all get frustrated. The key is having tools that you can use so that you recognize a situation and go, oh, my child's laying down on the ground throwing a tantrum. I saw Jason's video and I remember that he's just trying to communicate, and that changes things. That changes the way you react. It allows you to be more calm, and I'm a recovering yeller. I used to get really upset and yell, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I still get upset and I still may yell, but drastically different, drastically reduced. It's just, and I can tell you that those times that happens is that there's usually something else going on. It has nothing to even do with my kids. There's some frustrating thing with business, or, something else happened. And then, we're just kind of in this pressure cooker, and right now, just a lot of people are feeling that, a lot of people are feeling that pressure cooker of, not really knowing how to handle this, and rightfully so. You got to give yourself some credit, give yourself a break, a break. But, if you have a spouse or a partner, give each other breaks. And that was something, especially with toddlers and babies and everything. And that was something that my wife and I were really good at, is when one of us kind of had it and we would tag, you're it, and you go in. And that still happens now, where one of us may get really frustrated with something because, let's say, we had a bad day, and dealing with my kids at 8, 9 o'clock at night is not my favorite thing after I'm tired and have a full day. And so, if something, if it gets to some extreme, it's like, hey, what, can you handle that? And you have those kinds of conversations to say, what, I'm feeling really anxious right now, or I'm upset, and recognizing that. And you don't want to lay that out on the kids. It's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for you. So know how to back off and know that. And so in this situation, give yourself a little bit of credit, and take it easy a little bit more. Anybody else? You got questions? Let me see. This thing doesn't refresh. I apologize. Chaos from Indiana. Awesome. Let me know where you're from if you're joining me here. And if you do have any other questions, I got a couple minutes. But I just wanted to tell everybody, kind of going over similar things, is that, having a child, having a toddler is not an easy situation. You know, for me, the toddler years were tough. They were really tough, especially the first one. You know, the second one, you've done it before and you kind of know what to expect. And you know, I had then taken parenting classes, and then got certifications and coaching. And I developed my knowledge by studying it and practicing it and doing that. And so, which I've mentioned, it's like, I exercise, I eat well, I meditate. All of these things are long-term things. And parenting is the same. You're not, although, other than a diaper and feeding and whatever, which you become an expert right away, after changing 3 diapers, the emotional stuff and the psychology and they take time. They take time for you to develop. They take time for the child to understand. And you have to understand that and have patience. And if you do, you'll be much, much happier. Sorry, there's a chat here. So Joseph asks, I've seen my nephew listen differently from his dad and his mom. Any tips to make sure your child listens to the mom and the same as the dad? Yeah, I think you have to talk with your spouse about the type of parenting and about the type of techniques that you want to implement and how you want your parenting to go. Like in my situation, my wife, we both agree on the style of parenting per se. We've both been through classes and we've done things together. And so we have a very similar philosophy on a lot of things, which really helps. The issues that we may have where we differ, we make sure that we don't do that and discuss it in front of the children. But what'll happen is, we'll have those kinds of discussions. But I know, like as an example, my wife is a little bit more, she doesn't stress as much or have as much anxiety as I do. And so she's a little bit more relaxed in that sense. So things don't bother her as much. Where for me, I may, something as far as like the kids aren't listening or not cleaning up or doing something, I have a tendency to have a shorter fuse. So I'm the one who I have to practice that, and so my wife wakes up with the sunshine happening, open up the curtains and everything's wonderful. I don't wake up that way. I wake up when it's dark. But I don't wake up. I have a tendency to I have to get moving and going and sort of, we're just different in that sense. So I think if you see a difference, to try to get back to the question, if you see a difference with the parenting of the dad versus the mom, it's very clear, most likely, there's a couple things going on. One, the child spends much more time with one than the other. Or two, their styles of parenting are way different. And the child begins to understand that, I can get away with this with dad, or I can't get away with this with dad, but I can get away with that with mom, or vice versa. So I think you have to be very clear together about the types of things that you want to do and how you handle it. But yeah, it's a discrepancy in time spent, comfortability, and most likely the discipline or the style of parenting that the child had or that you do with the child. So you've got to be mindful of that. Avram has another question. My wife is pregnant and my daughter has been really clinging to the point she's wanting to sleep with her in her room. What should I do? Well, if your wife has a problem with it, of her sleeping, that's something that she obviously should talk to her about. But, one of the things that happens, I think, especially as a sibling comes, is that they feel like they're going to get less attention. And so what you want to do too is you have to build up the child that they are going to be able to teach this new child things. They're going to be the helper, depending on how old your other child is. This is their baby sister or brother. And then the other thing too, depending on the age, if they're really young, is when the baby arrives or such, get a present. Doesn't have to be expensive, but get a present from the baby to your child. My wife did that, and my son just thought it was the greatest thing ever. He's like, I can't believe, my sister gave me this present. It was like a little scooter or something. And from day one, we made it very clear that he's the big brother. He gets to help out and he gets to do things. And he just loved the role. So as far as being clingy, I would guess, don't know for sure, there's probably more information, but I would guess that that is a result of your child feeling a little fearful that she's not going to get that attention. And so if it's specifically you're asking about sleeping, everyone has different ideas and different comforts about sleeping. I'm not going to judge that. You can, with our firstborn, we had a completely separate room. With the other one, my daughter slept in our bed. Everybody's situation is different. That is a absolute personal choice. I think there are actually some ramifications of each one, but I won't get into that. But that's an individual choice. And so I'm not going to give advice on that. But for your daughter, I think you just have to make sure that she is maybe getting a little bit extra attention right now. And of course, when your new daughter or son, new child comes, you're going to want to make sure you give them a little bit extra, your daughter a little bit extra attention. And I hope that answers it. But that's normal behavior, for her to feel clingy. I mean, my kids will still do that, and they're older. They just want attention, and sometimes I think that the fact that we give them the attention fosters more attention. So you want to be careful. You can't always be available. Sometimes it might not feel great, but sometimes you do have to back off and you say, you know what, I can't right now. You aren't expected to give your child attention 24/7. Like, it's just not realistic. And I don't think it's healthy. I mean, they have to have their own boundaries. They have to be able to entertain themselves. It's not your job to do that 24/7. So sometimes it can be that, and say, you know what, you need to do this on your own. And if they may cry, it's fine. You ignore it. You have to be able to give them the ability to grow independently and be independent. So hopefully that helps. Just a minute here. Minus had asked, first child due soon. Anything you could be... it's not me deleting these messages, is it? I don't know what's happening. Well, I don't know. The messages are being deleted. I'm not sure if you guys are deleting those or that was me, and I apologize. But I think what was said was if there's anything you can do to get your child to listen at an early age, or to start early, I don't think so. Talking with them, that's going to be the best thing. But I think you're sort of a little ahead of the game. Just concentrate on being present, providing unconditional love and affection, and spending quality time and bonding with your child and such. One of the things a lot of soon-to-be dads and new dads and such want to know a lot of stuff, and that's great. I mean, I love that. That's a big part of this channel. What happens is when you actually have the child, and ask any parent that has a 3-month-old or a 2-month-old, they are not thinking about manners, or listening. You were thinking about it, but in general, those kind of parenting things and the teaching, and it all comes a little bit later. As your child begins to walk and talk and hear you and understand you, and they're this little person, that's when you start to think and try to do the other things and like the quote parenting things. Versus, when they're babies, it's about, sleep and feeding and diapering and comforting. And so you're really in a different stage. And I would say, if I could, to worry about that stage now first and concentrate on doing the best you can for that stage, rather than worrying so much about the future. Because I think what happens is you end up missing parts of it, thinking about, well, how am I going to be able to do this? And how am I going to be able to do that? Instead of really concentrating on the fact of, like, how can we make a sleep schedule better? Or maybe what are the, best foods we could give our baby? And maybe you are doing that stuff, but I would say then don't worry about the other things yet. That would be my advice is just concentrate on the present moment. You have time. Yes, it will go by fast, but you don't need to worry so much about the future parenting things. That's what we have. We have a lot of time for that. So as they are going into 1, 2, and such, becoming toddlers and starting to walk and after crawling, that's when when they start listening and they start talking and they start giving you feedback. That's when you start to really hone in on this parenting stuff. Before that, it's not so much about parenting versus just dealing with a baby. All right, so I hope everyone enjoyed the live. I did, but I want to thank everybody. And last thing was the course. If you have interest, for those of you who popped on, if you have more interest in learning about discipline and communication and affection and all of the things that are really, really important, I have a Dad University program. And I'm really excited about this. That's why I keep talking about it. And I've got a couple spots left for this initial launch. And so if you are interested, email me, info@daduniversity.com. And we'll set up a phone call. And so, yes, this is recorded. I'll put it on the channel so that you can watch it, for those of you who just asked, so that it'll replay and you can play it. So most of the videos I have that are the live videos. I will eventually get back to recording my weekly videos. It's just with the course and everything happening with the course, it's been difficult to do all of that at once and still have a family and a life. And so I have to practice what I preach, and work-life harmony is important to me. So I do want to wish everybody, happiness, success, health, gratitude. Thank you for being a subscriber. If you haven't already, subscribe and like this video. And I will see everyone soon. And if you have comments or anything, always on the channel. I'd love to hear what you guys thought. So everyone have a wonderful night, and I'll see you soon. Take care.